They picked the restaurant without me. That's how it started. No one asked what I liked. No one checked my schedule. Karen just said it was settled. We'd be going to that farm-to-table place out by the vineyards. The one with the antique chandeliers and the handwritten menus. I'd driven past it a dozen times on the way to work and thought, maybe someday. Now here it was. My 50th birthday dinner. Not planned for me, but around me. Like I was a fixture. Like I was the cake stand, not the cake. The sun was already low when we pulled up. The gravel crunched under the tires. I noticed right away how polished everything was. The copper lanterns, the old brick facade, the two perfect bushes out front trimmed into shapes that made no sense. Inside, the maitre d' welcomed us like they were the honored guests. He looked over my shoulder when I gave my name, smiled at Karen, smiled at her daughter, didn't bother to meet my eyes. There were 8 of us. Karen, her daughter Maya, Maya's boyfriend, her brother Ethan, and a couple of family friends whose names I always had to be reminded of. I'd paid for more dinners than I could count with these people. Holidays, reunions, anniversaries that weren't mine, but I never felt like I was in the picture. I was always just out of frame. The table was set in a private corner. White tablecloth, golden light, hushed acoustics. Everything expensive, everything quiet. The kind of place where people lower their voices to seem important. They brought out the first bottle of wine before we even sat down. Not one I would have chosen. I watched as Karen swirled it like she'd practiced. Maya laughed at something the waiter said, her dress too formal for a family dinner. Everyone looked like they were playing a part, like this was a scene from A Better Life and I'd been invited to cameo. I smiled. I always smiled. That was my role. No one asked me about work. No one asked how I felt turning 50. I was the milestone, not the man. I don't remember what triggered it. One moment we were talking about real estate. Ethan had just bought a condo, mostly with my help, though no one mentioned that. And the next moment, Maya leaned forward, her voice a little too loud, her grin already cocked like a gun. "You know, Mom," she said, lifting her glass just slightly. "If I ever marry, I hope I can find a man who tries half as hard to impress strangers." It landed like a slap with a smile. There was a beat of silence, just enough to feel it, and then the table erupted in polite laughter. Not wild, not cruel. Just coordinated, measured. They clinked glasses. Karen didn't look at me. I sat still. The waiter poured more wine. Someone made a joke about turning 50 being the new 30. I didn't hear it. I just watched Maya, watched the curl of her mouth, the self-satisfaction gleaming in her eyes like she'd won something. And then Karen leaned in. Her hand brushed mine, cold as porcelain. She didn't whisper, didn't hide it. "Stop embarrassing the family. Just leave." 3 seconds. That's all it took. 3 seconds to rewrite 16 years. I stood, buttoned my coat. No one tried to stop me. That was the loudest part. I stepped out into the night. The wind had picked up. The sky was clear. The stars didn't blink. I walked to the car slowly, deliberately, like I was walking away from a funeral. I sat behind the wheel and stared at the reflection of the restaurant in the side mirror. They were still laughing. The candlelight inside made everything soft, made their silhouettes look warm and close. My hands were steady. My face was numb. I took out my phone, scrolled past contacts, past old messages, past every photo I had stored, birthday parties, graduations, lake trips, every single one of them with people who now clinked glasses after cutting me down. I made one call, not to Karen, not to Maya, not to Ethan, not even to my brother. I called the bank, the direct line, the one they told you not to use unless it was urgent. My voice didn't shake. I gave my name, verified the passphrase, listened to the click of keys on the other end. "I need to freeze all wire transfers out of the joint account. Effective immediately." A pause. The agent asked, "Would you like to schedule a review of recurring payments as well, sir?" "Yes." One by one, I listed them. The rent for Maya's off-campus apartment. The car insurance I'd been quietly covering for Ethan. The streaming accounts, the gym memberships, the university bookstore deposits, the birthday fund, the grocery stipend, the tuition bridge loan I had never even told Karen about. Each line was a vein. Each cancellation was a scalpel. "I'd like everything frozen until further notice," I said. By the time I hung up, it was past 11. I wasn't angry. That's what people never understand about moments like this. It wasn't rage. It was revelation. I sat there for a long time in that parking lot, watching the restaurant, watching the shadows move behind the curtains. At 11:43 p.m. they came out. All of them, drunk on wine and laughter and the kind of security that only money provides when you've never had to worry about where it comes from. I didn't honk. I didn't wave. I didn't even turn on the engine. I just watched them climb into the SUV I paid for. Watched Karen sit in the passenger seat without looking once toward the lot where my car was parked. At 11:57 I got the first alert. Auto payment failed. I smiled. A real smile this time. Not the performance they were used to. By midnight, $62,000 in future obligations were in limbo. I'd logged into every portal, every linked account. I knew the architecture of this family better than they did. They never noticed how much I managed, how much I absorbed, how many fires I put out before they saw smoke. But that night, I let the flames rise. It wasn't revenge. It was recognition. Recognition of what I had become. A wallet with a heartbeat. A man whose value was measured in monthly transfers and tax refunds. And they had finally said it out loud. "You're not one of us. You're embarrassing. Just leave." So I did. I left their safety net full of holes and waited to see who would patch it. I didn't go home that night. I drove aimlessly for hours, no destination, no radio. Just the sound of tires humming and the weight of silence pressing into my ears. There's a kind of quiet that doesn't come from absence. It comes from finality. From knowing you've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. I had stepped into that space now. The cold clarity of no return. The roads blurred. Town after town passed under the sodium lights. I didn't feel tired. I didn't feel anything. At some point past 2 a.m., I pulled into a motel off the highway. No questions asked. Cash only. I paid for one night and asked for no wake-up call. The room smelled like bleach and old carpet. The bed creaked when I sat down. The walls were thin enough that I could hear a television buzzing in the next room. Some late-night rerun of a sitcom that didn't know when to die. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling until it blurred. My phone buzzed twice, one from Karen, one from Maya. I didn't open them. I left them unread. Let the weight of my absence fill the space they had so easily told me to leave. Across town, I imagined the scene unfolding. At first, they were probably laughing, still drunk on wine and superiority, still full from steak I had paid for, toasts I hadn't been included in. They might have assumed I was pouting, that I was licking my wounds like a dog after being swatted from the dinner table. But the hours would drag, and the cracks would start to show. The first hit would be Maya. She was careless with money, always had been. Her rent was due. Her card would decline. Maybe she'd try to fill up her gas tank and the PIN wouldn't work. Maybe she'd try to order her usual morning smoothie, only to watch the cashier look at her like a thief. That's when the panic would start. Ethan would feel it next. His gym membership would ping back unpaid. His streaming services would log him out. He'd check the bank app and see a balance that suddenly looked like a cliff's edge. The steady drip of support, all of it frozen midair. Karen would catch on last. That's always how it went. She never watched the accounts. She only noticed when things stopped working. The dishwasher, the thermostat, me. By the time dawn crept in over the hills and spilled into their kitchen, the emails would be there. Flags, errors, missed payments, insufficient funds. The alarm bells I used to disarm before they ever rang. I was no longer there to silence them. At 7:12 a.m., the phone started ringing. Not a buzz. Not a polite ping. A full-throated, urgent call. Karen's name flashed across the screen. I didn't answer. Another call. Maya this time. Then Ethan. Then Karen again. I turned the phone over, screen down. The motel was still dark, the sun just beginning to peel the sky apart. I sat at the edge of the bed and listened to my own breathing, slow and deliberate. Sounded strange, as though I hadn't heard it in years. Then the text started. Karen, where are you? Maya, my card's not working. Did something happen? Karen, this is serious. We need to talk. Ethan, did the bank mess up? I'm getting error messages. Karen, please, I'm sorry about last night. We can talk. Don't do anything rash. There it was. That word. Rash. They thought this was a tantrum. They thought this was punishment. They didn't understand that this wasn't about emotion anymore. This wasn't about hurt feelings or wounded pride. This was the calm beyond the fury. The place where decisions don't get undone. I didn't answer. Not out of spite. Out of discipline. Out of finality. The motel coffee was stale, but I drank it anyway. I stood at the window and watched cars roll down the highway. People heading to jobs, to obligations, to lives they hadn't been asked to leave. The sun hit the windshield of my car like a searchlight, but I didn't flinch. I packed my things in silence. No rush. The phone buzzed again, longer this time. A voicemail. Karen's voice, brittle and frantic. Michael, this isn't like you. You're scaring Maya. She didn't mean what she said. I should have stepped in sooner. I know that. But please don't make decisions like this. We can fix it. Just come home. We'll talk. There it was again. The belief that this could be fixed with talk. With negotiation. With a weekend of apologies and reset buttons. But this wasn't a storm passing overhead. This was the roof caving in. I checked my email while the coffee burned my throat. The bank had confirmed every freeze. Every cancellation. Every alert had been triggered as intended. Tuition payments locked. Rent support disabled. Phone plans, insurance, cloud storage all suspended. A life built on convenience, now dismantled with precision. I read every confirmation like a eulogy. At 8:35 a.m. The tone shifted. The messages started bending toward fear. Maya, I'm late for work and I can't fill my tank. Can you please answer? Ethan, bro, I don't know what's going on, but my app says I've been locked out. Karen, okay, you've made your point. We get it. Just call me. Karen, Michael, if you've done something to the accounts, we need to undo it right now. Please. Karen, don't ruin everything over a joke. There it was again. A joke. As if the moment that sliced through my chest was just another punchline in their dinner script. As if telling a man he was nothing could be walked back with a text. I didn't respond. By late morning, the voicemails grew more desperate. Karen was no longer composed. Her words stumbled. She was crying or trying not to. I listened to one message, then deleted it before it could end. She didn't understand yet, but she would. It was around 11:17 a.m. when the apologies started to appear. First from Maya. I was out of line last night. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. You know, I always joke around like that. I read it twice. The tone hadn't changed, just the stakes. Then Ethan. Yo, man. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I appreciate what you've done. Really? Just hit me back when you can. And finally Karen again. Michael, please. I know this isn't how you wanted your birthday to go. I should have said something. Maya was out of line. I wasn't fair to you. We were wrong. Please just come home. But I didn't want apologies. I wanted the truth. And they had already shown it. They were never sorry for what they said, only for what it cost them. By noon, the cracks were wide open. The panic was setting in. Maya sent another message, more frantic. My landlord says the rent hasn't cleared. I could get evicted. Please, please, please call me. I'm sorry. Just tell me what to do. What to do. I stared at the message like it had been sent in another language. For years, I had made sure that question never needed to be asked. I was the answer, always. The bridge. The patch. The safety net. The ghost in the machine that made life livable. And now, without me, the machine was stalling. That was the first real consequence. I sat in a diner at noon. Greasy eggs, burnt toast, coffee poured by a woman who didn't know my name and didn't care. The kind of place where no one talked unless they had to. I preferred it that way. The phone buzzed again. I let it ring out. I watched a family across the room. 2 kids, 1 father, 1 mother. The father leaned in to whisper something and the kids burst out laughing. It wasn't cruel laughter. It wasn't mockery. It was the kind of laughter I used to think I'd earned. But I had never been that father. Only the filler between the frames. I paid the bill and left a tip. By the time I walked back to the car, a dozen more messages had arrived. Some soft, some accusatory, some pleading. But I didn't respond. Not out of punishment, because the decision had already been made. By 12:07 p.m., the messages changed. Not just the words, the tone. Gone was the pleading. Gone was the soft edge of apology. Something harder crept in. A shift. Desperation wrapped in performance. Maya, if this is about last night, you're taking it too far. Nobody meant anything by it. Ethan, look, I get you're mad, but freezing our accounts? Come on, man, that's petty. Karen, we've all said things we didn't mean. You've made your point. Can we stop now? But I hadn't made my point. I'd made my choice. There's a difference. I wasn't waiting for them to get it. I wasn't hoping they'd break down crying or write some tearful apology that made it all okay. I didn't need closure. I didn't need repair. I needed clarity, and I had it. I drove into the city and parked outside the law office I'd used for years, the same firm that helped me set up the college fund accounts, the trust for Ethan, the living will that named Karen as executor. I'd been responsible. I'd planned. I'd never missed a payment. Never let the future go unguarded. That morning, I undid every part of it. I sat across from a junior partner, a young man named Darius who always wore the same navy suit and never looked me in the eye unless it was about numbers. He scanned the files I brought in, page after page of access requests, beneficiary changes, revocations. I need it all updated, I said. Every signature, every date. Strip their names off everything I control. He hesitated just for a breath, then nodded. Understood, Mr. Lang. Mr. Lang. I hadn't heard my name spoken with that kind of respect in months, maybe years. While Darius filed the changes, I sat in the lobby and read the news. Markets were up. Forecasts looked good. Somewhere, other men were making deals, signing contracts, building futures for people who'd never say thank you. I understood them now. I had become one of them. At 1:46 p.m., the bank called. A fraud alert. Not because something was wrong, because something was different. Too much activity in too short a span. They wanted to confirm the access changes. The removals. The locks. Yes, I told them. Everything's correct. Proceed. The final sweep took another 30 minutes. When I stepped back onto the sidewalk, I felt taller. Not lighter, not freer, but resolved. There's a difference between peace and purpose. One asks you to let go. The other demands you act. I wasn't letting go. I was taking back. By mid-afternoon, the messages slowed. Not because they understood, because they didn't know what else to say. Panic had worn thin. Now came the calculations. Karen, can we just talk like adults? We're still a family. This isn't the way. Maya, so what? You're just going to pretend we're nothing now? After everything? Ethan, I've got bills due, man. This is gonna mess me up. You know that, right? Yes, I knew. But for the first time, it wasn't my problem to solve. I went home around 4. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm when everything is still standing but you know nothing is the same. Karen was in the kitchen. She turned when I walked in. Her face was puffy. Her eyes rimmed with the red of someone who'd been crying but hadn't committed to it. She opened her mouth. Maybe to say, welcome home. Maybe to beg, but I raised a hand. Don't, I said. She froze. I'm only here to get my things. That shut her down. Completely. I walked through the house with deliberate slowness. My office first. The folders. The fireproof box with every tax return. The backup drives. Then the garage. My tools. My gear. The items no one else touched, no one else understood. Karen followed me, but she didn't speak. Not until I reached the bedroom. Michael, she said. Please, just wait. I paused by the closet. Why? I asked. Her voice cracked. This isn't you. She was wrong. This was the only version of me that ever told the truth. I turned to face her. You let them laugh at me, I said. You let your daughter humiliate me in front of strangers. And when I stood up, you told me to leave. Like I was the embarrassment. Not her. Not them. Me. Her lips trembled. You know she didn't mean it. She meant it. I cut in. They all did. And you did too. You just didn't say it out loud. The silence between us cracked like glass. You think this is about money, I said. It's not. It's about lines. Boundaries. Respect. Her eyes fell. She didn't argue. Because she knew. Every sacrifice I had made. Every bill I paid. Every late night. Every gift. Every trip was a brick. I had built a house they lived in but never saw. And when I asked for the smallest form of acknowledgement, respect, they laughed. And she laughed with them. I'm not coming back, I said. You'll have to tell them that. You'll also need to tell them their accounts are closed. Their college funds are frozen. Their rent, their bills, their insurance, it's all on hold. If they want a future, they'll need to find the man they do respect and ask him to build it. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Todd won't help. I nodded. Then they'll learn. She took a step forward. Michael, please, don't punish them like this. I met her eyes. I'm not punishing them. I'm ending the lie. That's different. I packed the rest in silence. The only thing I left behind was a photo, one of those fake family portraits we had taken 2 Christmases ago. Matching sweaters. Forced smiles. The kind of picture you send to people to prove you're happy. I left it face down on the counter. By 6:09 p.m. I was gone. The phone lit up again just after dark. I didn't check it. I already knew what it would say. They weren't ready. They were confused. They were scared. But none of that was my burden anymore. I had carried a family that didn't carry me. I had signed checks to people who wouldn't sign their name beside mine on anything that mattered. I had worn the mask of father, of husband, of provider, and now I had taken it off. Turns out, without the mask, I was invisible to them anyway. So I leaned into the silence. And I waited to see how long it would take before they realized that without my hands holding it up, the house they lived in, metaphorical and real, couldn't stand. And when that realization came, I knew it would arrive not with words, but with need. That's how reversal works. Not with rage. Not with punishment. With absence. With facts, not feelings. With silence that speaks louder than begging ever could. I didn't go back the next day. Or the day after that. I rented a small apartment across town. Monthly lease, no commitments. 1 bedroom, 1 window, no expectations. The kind of place no one notices. No framed photos, no reminders. Just blank walls, a mattress on the floor, and silence that didn't judge. I set up a chair by the window. I liked watching traffic. Strangers going somewhere with purpose, even if they didn't know where. They weren't waiting on me. They didn't expect anything. I was no one to them. That was peace. The messages kept coming. Some long, some short, a few wordless. Just a name on the screen blinking into silence. I read none of them. I had already heard everything they had to say the night I turned 50. By Thursday, Karen stopped texting. By Saturday, she called once. By Sunday, she didn't call at all. The void they used to fill with my effort was starting to echo. The financial systems I built, precise, invisible, dependable, were no longer humming beneath their lives. They noticed, not immediately, but slowly, in bills that didn't pay themselves, in cards that no longer swiped, in doors that didn't open. Maya tried first. I knew she would. She was always the loudest, always the most sure that the world owed her answers. Michael, I get it. You're mad. But this is hurting everyone. Just tell me what to do. Please. That word again. Please. As if that single syllable was a key to unlock years of dismissal. I ignored it. Not because I wanted to see her suffer, but because I had already tried to show her how to stand. She never wanted to learn. A week passed. Then came the shift. The money ran out. I heard from a mutual friend that Maya's apartment management posted a notice on her door. Eviction process begun. Not because she couldn't find help, because she'd burned every bridge on the way up. Ethan moved back in with Karen. He tried to frame it as just for a while, but the truth was written all over his face. He wasn't ready to survive without the scaffolding I had built under his feet. Karen sent one final message. I don't know what to tell them anymore. I don't know how to explain what you're doing. I almost replied, but I didn't, because I had already explained. For 16 years. Through actions. Through sacrifice. Through a kind of presence no one saw until it was gone. Let them explain me to each other now. Let them describe what they lost without ever knowing they had it. I spent my days filing paperwork, transferring titles, dissolving joint accounts. I sold the second car, took my name off the house. I let the equity sit in escrow until a decision could be made. I wasn't vindictive. I wasn't vengeful. I was done. At night I walked. No direction. Just blocks and blocks of quiet streets. My hands in my pockets. My thoughts like wind. No one stopped me. No one asked where I'd been. I didn't wear the face of a man with a crisis. I wore the face of a man who had finally told the truth. They had called me bitter, petty, cruel. But cruelty is withholding what was promised. I had never promised them anything but what I gave. They assumed permanence. They mistook sacrifice for obligation. They thought presence was their right, not my choice. Now they were learning what it meant to lose a man like me. Not a father. Not a husband. Just a man. One who showed up. Every day. Without being asked. And once gone, left a silence that couldn't be filled with blood or titles. Weeks passed. I stopped counting. One day, I came home to find a letter taped to my door. It was from Maya. Handwritten. Messy. Unfiltered. She said she was sorry. That she hadn't understood what I'd done for her. That she'd called her biological father and he'd refused to help. That she was scared. Angry. Alone. I used to think you were just there, she wrote. Now I realize you were the only reason everything worked. I never said thank you. I don't think I even thought it. I just assumed. And now, I don't know how to fix it. The letter ended without a plea. No request for money. No demand. Just a name scrawled at the bottom. I read it twice, then folded it, placed it in the drawer and didn't reply. Because regret isn't the same as change. The silence didn't mean they were abandoned. It meant they had to learn. Karen wrote once more after that. A long email. She said she missed me. That she understood now. That the house felt wrong without me in it. That she had tried to hold everything together, but nothing seemed to stay in place. I used to think your strength was just part of you, she wrote. I didn't see how much effort it took. How much you carried. I see it now. I see everything now. But she saw it too late. And seeing is not the same as repairing. Love without respect is ornamental. A paper flower pressed into a book, admired and forgotten. I had lived in that book for too long, so I kept walking. I didn't date. I didn't socialize. I didn't seek comfort. I didn't need to be comforted. I needed to live inside the shape of the man I had become. Not the one they needed, not the one they buried in convenience, but the one who stood alone and finally recognized himself. One morning early, I passed a park bench where a boy sat with his father. The boy looked up, said something, and the man laughed. Not performative, not posed, just clean laughter. The boy smiled back like that sound was the only currency that mattered. It didn't break me. It reminded me that I had tried. For years, I had tried to build that moment, to give that experience. But you can't manufacture gratitude. You can't inject respect into someone who doesn't value the hand that feeds them. You can only offer it. And wait. And when it doesn't come, you walk. That's not cruelty. That's survival. I wrote a letter of my own once. I never sent it. I left it sealed in a drawer. Simply read. I gave you everything. You gave me silence. And when I finally answered in kind, you called it cruelty. It was not. It was a mirror. That's the truth. So now I ask you, whoever reads this, whoever thinks themselves moral, patient, good, was I wrong? Was I wrong to step back when I'd been erased? Was I wrong to stop feeding a system that saw me only as a resource? Was I wrong to demand that love be more than convenience? And if you say yes, then I ask you, how many years would you have given before you asked for respect? How many quiet humiliations would you have swallowed before you said, enough? Tell me, would you have endured it?